Let's get my chair in the proper orientation. And maybe tilt this down a bit so you can see my bench here. And maybe a little bit more. Move it further back. We're figuring it out. Nobody's in here, so this would just be for people watching it on replay. But I think I'm on screen right now. That's fantastic. Just do some more adjustments here because nobody's in here yet. Let's try. For anybody watching this on replay, I'm sorry, you can probably just skip a couple minutes. Maybe skip 2 minutes ahead and we should have it all figured out. We'll try that. Hold it up a little bit more. I'll just bend over to talk to everyone. All right, we still don't have anybody in here. But yeah, for anybody watching it on replay, today we are doing some bushcrafting. I'm just going to give you some of my techniques that I use on a lot of projects, talk about how some things work, some more finer details, and really walk through why certain things work the way they do. In a lot of my videos where I do bushcrafting projects, I talk more about, okay, here's how I'm doing this to get the task done. But today I'm going to talk about why I do it and show you kind of the in and out of how all these different techniques work. And then at the end of it, we are going to start rigging up and preparing for a carp fishing mission tomorrow morning. I'll be heading out with Bob from Anyfin Is Possible. I think his kids will eventually be there as well. We're going to be doing some carp fishing tomorrow morning, and I'm going to set up some of my gear for that adventure while I'm on live here as well. If you're in, let me know you're in. Send me a chat. I have one person in. It keeps fluctuating. I'm not sure what's going on here. Keeps going from 1 to 0. I have one person in. Let me know who you are once you pop in so I know who all is here. And yeah, I'm just going to get started, get a little bit more organized before we started here. Okay, we've got one person in. Okay. Anyfin is in, the man himself. Awesome. I'm just trying to get the camera set up here. I'm sure you know the camera setup is always a kind of a hassle. Let's see if we do that, what we look like there. Oh, now we got 2 people in. That's awesome. I have to like sit way back in East Jabip to get myself in frame. I'm kind of in frame. I'll have to lean over a little bit. All right. I think we're good. Now we got 3 people. My dad's in here spying on me, he says. That's fair. Parents can spy on their kids all they want. All right. As I mentioned when I was just getting in here, I'm just going to do some bushcraft stuff, talk about why I'm doing everything that I'm doing, talk about some of my favorite techniques and certain things that I do to make projects work better, and some techniques that just make things easier to do. Talk about different things to do with wood, different knots to tie maybe. I've got a couple tools here. And the basis of today's live, as far as the bushcraft side of things, is simple tools. I'm going to be doing everything with Swiss Army knife. This is a Victorinox Huntsman, and my bushcraft knife. And then in the second part of today's live, we're probably going to do 35, 40-ish minutes of bushcraft stuff. Then I'm going to switch over to rigging up some rods and gear for tomorrow's carp fishing mission with Anyfin, who is in chat. Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of get started with some of the bushcraft stuff here. I picked these up. I walked home from school today, believe it or not, because I didn't have my truck. Not my truck, but I use it. It's my grandpa's truck. did not have that accessible to me, so I walked home and I picked up some different pieces of wood, some smaller twigs as well, and actually 2 dried out walnuts. If you guys remember my walnut video that I did, I talked about how the ones that are kind of dried out typically don't have any meat inside. We'll be able to test that on camera. Theoretically, there's not going to be anything in here, and I'm going to be able to do some different techniques and show you some different strategies to use with dried out walnut shells too. So yeah, I also have a sharpener. This is a Work Sharp guided field sharpener, because when you're doing extensive bushcraft sessions, you often go dull, especially on lower quality steels like this one. I think this is 1066 carbon steel. Goes dull pretty quick, but it's pretty easy to sharpen back up. So if it gets dull, I'm just going to touch it back up and keep going. I do want to make a disclaimer because YouTube is weird about these things because I am young. Make sure if you are young, you have proper parent permission to use sharp things like knives that could be dangerous. They're tools. Make sure you use them as such. And yeah, if you're an adult too, just make sure you're using it properly. Throughout this, I'll be talking about how to make sure you don't cut yourself. Let's check chat here, see what's going on. Got 4 people in here. All right, we've got Anyfin. As I said, we've got both my mom and dad. My mom is with my grandma, who's in the hospital. And we have the train and car. That's one of my buddies from school. I was messing with him earlier. I was like, hey, you going to be there? He said he would, and he showed up. How's it going, Braden? Hopefully you are enjoying your evening. I definitely am. I don't like school, as you know. I'm sure you don't either, and I'm happy to be in the weekend. So, yeah. First thing I'm going to do, as I mentioned, I'm going to crack open these walnuts, and I'm going to see if there's anything inside. As I said, I'm betting on the fact that there's not. We'll see how credible I am. Make sure you keep your fingers out of the path of the blade. I'm going to use this kind of like a baton, which I've showed before. And as I said, there is not any meat inside of these because they are the old dried up ones. If they're kind of sitting outside of the husk, I have never found one that has meat inside that isn't inside the husk still. So just a cool little tidbit. We're going to be doing some different projects with these on the live today. Let's crack open the other one while we're at it. And this one kind of has some stuff, but it's real dried up. And it's kind of just flaky stuff there. That's not something I would eat. It's kind of just little flakes. But yeah, so not really anything edible in either of those. I'm going to show you how you can use like nuts and wild edible stuff like that. If you live in a place like with coconuts, that'd be great, but you can use this to make like little cups and bowls. I'm going to show you how to do that. And then over here, let me grab it real quick. This is my most recent project, Bushcraft project that I did on Thursday night. I'm going to be showing you how to do something like this. This is like a little container. It's a real tiny little vial. Has a lid that's pretty secure. If I hold it just by the lid, it does stay on and it pops off. And then I don't know how well you can see inside. Might have to get some light going. Pull my flashlight out. There we go. It's hollow inside. I'm going to show you how to hollow out stuff like that. I'm going to talk about what you can do with green wood versus more dry wood. Just go through some things that I often use while bushcrafting. I'm going to start with this. First thing I'm going to do is put my knife in my sheath just to make sure we don't have any unnecessary cuts. As I said, I was going to mention knife safety. For those of you who don't know, that was this exact knife because I didn't put it back in the sheath. Don't ever do that. Don't ever make that mistake. I did, and I want to be the word of safety. Don't ever put the knife down and start doing work without it back in the sheath, because this is what happens. That was 4 stitches. I know I was talking to Terry B in a chat one day, and he said that he's never seen my scar. I mentioned something about it. If he comes in, there it is. Right there, my little smiley face on my hand. All right. Now that we got that out of the way with, we're going to keep going. So, first thing we're going to do is I have a vise here. Make sure we got that frame. There we go. I do have a vise here on my bench. What I like to do in the woods is lay it down on something flat, like a log or something, and cut with the saw along it. You can use bigger saws, but I picked a piece that is small enough to use with just the Victorinox saw. And then this is going to be the first technique I'll show you. So this is a pretty simple one. It's just a lot of people who haven't done this before just don't think about it. It's not anything spectacular. If you want to get through a piece of wood, make sure it's straight and make sure it's efficient. Only do a piece from one side and then kind of start working around. And this is actually probably easier on something like a log. Okay, now we're good. Because you can just rotate it. I'm actually going to have to take it out of the vise and put it back in to be able to make sure I can do this the proper way. But today, for the first thing, we're just going to start by working our way around this little piece of wood and cutting it off. Also, another tip, if you've never done this before, yet again, not something super special. If you've never done it before, make sure you do pull cuts first because they're easier to control to get your groove. And then you can start going back and forth. You don't want to fall out of that groove and cut yourself. That's another good way to hurt yourself. Just make sure you are nice and controlled with everything you're doing when you're using anything sharp. And I'm going to rotate it one more time, and that should be enough to get through here. And then we'll get into some more interesting bushcraft techniques. This is just cutting a piece of wood, like nothing special here. Let's check chat again while we're at it to see what's going on. Sound is a little scratchy. Okay, I will keep that in mind. Let me know if it goes away. If not, I may make an adjustment here. We'll see. And then yet again, another thing, which is pretty simple, but if you've never done it before, you wouldn't know. As you start to get to the end and you're close to getting through the entire piece of log here, you want to slow down and you want to push not quite as hard so that you don't break it off. Because a lot of time what happens is you push it and then you just end up having like a, I'll do another piece and I'll show you what I mean, but you almost have like a little flange off the end of it and you don't have a nice clean cut. So don't push as hard and go slower once you get to the end, and it should be pretty clean. And then you might even want to go back to just doing pull cuts like I mentioned before, because they're, as I mentioned, a lot more controlled. So I'm going to do that here. And now I'll do just pull cuts. I'm going to go slow and controlled just to show you what I mean. Just pull cuts. Nice and gentle with it. And then this has like a baby one. If you see here, has that little bit of flange on the edge. If you were pushing hard and sawing real fast, you'd have a really big flange and it'd be kind of annoying. But if you do it nice and slow and controlled, it should be pretty smooth. That's what we're working with there. I actually want the piece that's in the vise more. I care about that more than I do about this one. This will probably be the cap. We'll probably not get through the whole thing, but I'm going to start working on another one of these little containers. Show you some techniques there, because there's some really interesting stuff that goes on when you're doing something like this and you're trying to hollow it out. So I'm going to go a little bit faster through this next one and just cut a piece so that we can use that as the base here. I'll probably actually cut it from maybe this section here. So I'm losing people. Am I that unentertaining? Good for the most part, just a little sporadic. That's referring to the sound. Thanks, Bob. All right. So one thing to consider, which I mentioned before, is the difference with what you can do with green wood and drier wood. So this is drier wood. So I'm going to have to use a little bit different technique than I used on making this one, because this one was, it was more green wood, which if you're not familiar just means it's more fresh, it's more wet. What's interesting about green wood is you can't like reproduce it very well with things you have readily accessible to you in the woods, right? You can't just put water on it and make it more moist. I know that sounds like it would work. That just makes a whole mess and makes it harder to use. The only thing that actually works, in my experience, to make it more of that green wood property is something like mineral oil, which I do have here in the shop, in the little back room area shop, we call it. But I do have mineral oil here, but I do not carry it with me in the woods, meaning just be aware what you're doing and whether that means you're going to want to use green wood or you're going to want to use more dry wood like this here. As I mentioned, I did this with greener wood. Greener wood, essentially, the properties that it has there are that you can kind of peel it more as opposed to break it. What I mean by that is we have a nice little jagged edge over here, which we will demonstrate with. If you watch, when I go to cut on the dry wood, it kind of shears off like that. And if we look up close, I'm not sure how well it's going to do. Okay, it does a decent job. We have some little micro sharp edges on this drier wood. On greener wood, it almost peels off and it's super smooth. It doesn't give you as much resistance, but you also have to deal with moisture, and you'll probably have to do something like bake it over a fire, which is what I did here. Not over a fire, I just used a lighter, which yet again, for YouTube purposes, make sure you're using fire safely. Make sure you have parent permission if you are young to be able to use it, because fire can also be dangerous. But yeah, this I had to use the lighter to make sure I got all the moisture out and it hardened up efficiently. I'm not going to have to do that with this when I'm done. It's just something you have to consider. They have different properties and you're going to have to do different things. Okay, so let's put this back in the sheath, as I already mentioned. And I'm going to as quickly as I can, cut out a piece to use as the main section of our little container here. Let's check chat. We only got one person. I'm losing people. Who's still in here? Who is that? Gotta let me know. Hopefully we'll get more people. Oh, now we're back up to 3. I don't know what is happening. It's just like jumping all over the place. Bob is still here. Thank you, sir, for sticking with me. I'm not boring you, am I? I'm dropping my container I built on Thursday, which was yesterday. I don't know why I said Thursday. Pick that up again. All right, cool. All right, so what I'm going to do, put this back in the vise and try and cut out a middle section here. And this one I will only have to do one adjustment, I think, to get through it. Maybe my last live was just beginner's luck. I had 10 people in there. Right now I have 2, and I keep fluctuating between like 1 and 4. So, you know, I'll take what I can get. Thank you guys for sticking with me. I'm going to do pull cuts, as I mentioned, just to make sure I can get this started. And now I got a good enough divot to where I can just go at it a little bit more. And you can almost hear it. I'm not sure how good the audio is, but you can almost hear it start to give way, and that's when you slow down and use less pressure. There we go. So this one does have a little bit of an edge. This is kind of, not exactly, but this is kind of what I'm talking about. You've got this flange, and I'm going to have to deal with that. So I mentioned not doing that, and I already did it. You get more watch hours from rewatches than live watches. Strange YouTube fact. Yeah, I kind of noticed that. Like, I think, by the time I ended my first live, I had like, there were like 18 people who had watched it, and I came back 2-3 days later, and I had 72 people who had watched it. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. You'd think that a live stream would get more views while it's live, hence the name, but it's not always how it works. I mean, personally, if I don't catch the live right away, like as it's streaming, I usually just go back and watch little snippets of it. I won't sit down and watch the whole thing, kind of skip through. But yeah, it is kind of interesting that that's how that works. So another thing you're going to have to consider, yet again, this is kind of a fact for new people. People who have done this before already know this. If you got something like this or a big knot in the wood, that's going to be something you're going to try and avoid at all costs. I'm going to cut right above it so I don't have to cut through that knot. They're hard. They can mess up your blades. They're very difficult to work through. If you can avoid knots and little holes like this, try to do it. It's just a lot easier on yourself. So we're going to cut a little thing here, and then we'll get into the good stuff where I start showing some more sophisticated techniques here. Okay. Do our pull cuts, get our little divot. So I know we've got Bob and my mom with my grandma. Yeah, just chat what's going on there. I know generally what Bob is doing. I've been in constant conversation with him since we had the idea to do this little carp fishing mission. So I generally know what's going on with him, but I have not talked to my grandma today. So I know my mom's actually the one who's doing the chatting. What's going on with Grammy there? Check on, and we have one more person in here. Just let me know what's going on here. Grammy's enjoying listening to you. While I am enjoying doing this live, even though there's only 3 people, I'm still enjoying it and having fun. Okay, now I've got a good enough divot. I'll tilt it down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. Yet again, another safety tip. Make sure when you're cutting, yet again, this is pretty self-explanatory, but it should be said. When you're cutting or sawing, make sure your hand is never like on the back side of the blade or in front of where you're cutting. That is an easy way to hurt yourself. And another thing is when you're doing something like sawing, you probably want your hand further away. Like if you can get it further away, that's good. I know you need to support it. But there are other ways to do that. You can do things like if you're cutting a larger piece of wood, you can kind of torque it between your legs and make sure it stays in place that way. Your fingers are a lot more important than the convenience of cutting. Sometimes just taking a little bit extra time to do the cut properly without taking off your fingers is what needs to be done. Just something to consider. Safety should always be over convenience when you're doing stuff like this. Another thing, as I mentioned, you're going to have to go around in a circle as you're cutting. The reason for that is because even with saw blades like this, which are wider out by the edge and thinner back here, they still do get bound up. So you're going to want to rotate it to make sure you don't get stuck at a certain place. I'm going to flip it over, do it from this side. That vise a little tighter. Got 3 people in here. Thank you for sticking with me. Hopefully you are enjoying. I know this isn't the most entertaining part right here, but I have to cut this piece to get to the more advanced techniques, which I think are going to be a lot more interesting to talk about and are going to be more valuable to people. So this one, this is another problem you'll have. This isn't like the flange. If you see, there's actually like a little stair step on here. That's because as I was going around, my cuts didn't quite line up, which is something that will happen. I probably, if you do 3 cuts, the more cuts you do, the better it is to line it up. I only did 2 and it didn't line up. That was me being hasty, so now I'm going to have to take extra time to fix it, which is unfortunate, but it has to be done to, you know, do the project right. So there's a couple ways to fix this. The best one, in my eyes, is just get it in there nice and tight and kind of just saw back through it. You're not really sawing through anything. You're almost just kind of going along the little ridge and shearing it off, which that worked pretty well. And we now have the little ridge off. And then there's a little bit of the shearing on the edge that I talked about. Yet again, we did a pretty good job of minimizing it, but it is still there. And you can just take any sort of knife blade, go along the edge, and get that off if you need to. Yet again, make sure your fingers are out of the way of the blade. And that should be good. Now we can start on the fun stuff. So as I mentioned, everything I'm doing is going to be using a Swiss Army knife or just my standard Bushcraft knife with a Scandi grind. And this is one of those things. On a lot of Swiss Army knives, most of them in fact, you'll have this tool, which is called an awl. And the fact that it has a hole in the middle means you can also do sewing with it, which also makes it a reamer. This is like a combination reamer awl. What this can do for you is actually drill holes. So you want to press into it, not too hard. You also have to remember that this is a slip joint tool, meaning it has no lock and can fold back on your fingers. This isn't super sharp, but I'm sure if you did it hard enough, you could hurt your fingers, so be especially careful with that. And what you're going to do is you're going to twist it. Go back and forth, and then eventually you can kind of go in a circular motion and press down. Don't go too hard, as I mentioned, and you're going to essentially we're essentially boring a hole down to the middle of this. And it's a narrow hole, but it is there. And then we're going to work from that to continue to hollow out this piece of wood. As I mentioned earlier, difference between green wood and drier wood. This is a lot harder to work with and kind of breaks apart. So this is going to take me a little bit longer than it did the other day with the green wood, but I will get it done. You're just twisting it. I really like how Victorinox set up this particular awl because it has a T-handle and you can really get a lot of torque on it. So you're gonna just kind of like a drill. If you've used a drill to go through wood, you're kind of gonna want to back it out every once in a while and pull out the wood with it. That's what we're working with right now. It's probably half an inch deep-ish right now. This whole piece is about 2 inches long, so we're gonna go about, I don't know, 2/3 of the way down, something like that. This might take us a little bit, but we're gonna get there. Continue chatting if you're still in here. I'm gonna check here. All right, no more chats. People are just listening and enjoying. If you got any questions, any comments, anything that's going on, also I can't speak today. Sorry about that. Feel free to share out any upcoming videos that you've got on your channel. If you've got something going on soon, be completely open. I still can't speak. What is going on? Be completely open to sharing that out. I have no problem with that. I'm not sure what the status of my link sharing is on my YouTube lives. I don't know if you can share links, but if you got something going on, feel free to notify people about it so that they can come watch your stuff too. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So we're starting to make a little bit more progress now. I'm going to back it out again. So this is kind of what comes out. We just have like shards of wood and stuff. We got 6 people in here. Thanks for sticking with me. Trying my best to get down into this piece of wood here. All right, I'm going to work with that for now. We're about half an inch down in and we can start working on some stuff. So what you're going to want to have is a small, agile blade. What I mean is something you can move around easily and you're not going to be scared to work with, right? Big, huge blade is a lot harder to control and thus a little bit more dangerous to use than something real small like this. That's what I'm going to use. As you can see, we've got this hole. It's probably, I don't know, about 1/4 inch-ish in diameter. What we're going to do is you want to have a nice sharp blade. I'll do a future lives on sharpening. I do a lot of sharpening. I have diamond stones. It's something I really enjoy and I think is a super useful skill to have. So if you're not familiar with how to sharpen something up to get a nice, super clean, super sharp edge, I can talk about that in the future. But you're going to want a nice sharp blade, especially out here in the belly section where it curves up. This out here is the belly, and this is just kind of like the straight part of the blade. You're going to want to use the belly. You're going to stick the tip in like this, and you're essentially going to kind of make a circular motion, follow the hole here, and kind of go in a circle like this, making sure you're leading with the blade. You're not just twisting. That's an easy way to dull your blade, but lead with the sharp part and kind of make this hole a little bit wider. Yet again, I'm holding it on the outside here, kind of like in a gorilla closed grip like this. So that way that my fingers are never in the way of the blade. Just make sure you're being safe throughout this. And as I mentioned, you're going to need a sharp belly portion of the blade to make sure that you're doing this. As you can see, this is dulling out a little bit because I already did this with this portion of the blade on the one I made the other day. And as you can see, I have it hollowed out nicely on this one, and we're starting to get there on this one. This is kind of what we're aiming for here. And then you essentially do this further and further down and make a hole all the way down in here. That's what we're doing. I'm not going to spend too long on this. This is more of a demonstration thing. I'm not going to go through the whole process of making this, but I kind of want to show you how it works. Do a little bit more. Another thing to mention, especially with drier wood, is eye protection. You either want to be real far away like I am now, right, to where the shards aren't going to pop up in your face, or have safety glasses. I should probably go grab some just for the sake of being a model here. All right, now I've got safety goggles, so I can be a proper model and show you guys how to do this safely. Yeah, I have a pair of safety goggles in my slingshot kit, which is almost always within close proximity to me when I'm doing bushcraft stuff. Don't specifically have one in my bushcraft kit, but maybe that's something I should do in the future. Yeah, so I'm a lot closer now, meaning the shards, especially with dry wood, they like to break off instead of kind of peel off like I mentioned earlier. Oh, so links do work. Cool. They do work. That's awesome. Yet again, Bob has been having some issues with his lives lately, and people being inconsiderate and unkind. So if I end up having a situation where people are sharing links that shouldn't be shared, I'll have to turn that off. But until I have an issue, you guys are free to share links. So yeah, I'm still hollowing this out here. I got distracted. I was talking about making sure the shards don't fly up in your face. As I mentioned, greener wood will peel. This kind of stuff will break and kind of fly into your eyes. Greener wood, you almost don't have to worry. I'm not saying you shouldn't be safe about it, but you almost don't have to worry about stuff flying into your eyes because, as I mentioned, it peels off. This stuff, you definitely do have to worry about it. And I'm just going to kind of hollow this out just enough to where you can see where I'm going with this, and then I'm going to move on to some other techniques and talking about some of that stuff. So there you go. We're getting there. You can see how I'm starting to hollow it out there. And then once you make the hole deeper, all that sort of stuff, it takes a while. This took me probably about an hour and a half to do total, but you can hollow it down in there. And then the bigger piece of wood, bigger pieces of wood don't actually mean it's going to take you significantly more time, because then relative to the size of the wood, you can use bigger blades and take out bigger pieces of wood. We actually, instead of using an awl, we ended up using a drill press. My dad helped me do a bowl that was about this big. I think he might still be in chat, or my mom's definitely in chat. She can confirm my sizing. Something about like this, maybe about diameter of a softball. And that didn't take ultimately that much longer than this to do. Just replace the small blade with a big blade. I used this one here, and replaced the awl with a real drill bit. But you can do much smaller projects using stuff on your Swiss Army knife, and it works just fine. So I'm going to hollow this out just a little bit more, and then we'll move on. And I'll finish this up at a later date. Sounds about right. So, all right, let's see what chat's up to. We've got Bank Fishing and Adventures in here. Thank you for coming in. All right. And I'm going to call it there. As you can see, we'll do one final comparison. Where did I put the little one? There it is. You can see how I'm starting to hollow this out to the same diameter as this is. And it's nice and hollow down in there. This one's probably about an inch deep, but it's a little bit shorter container too. So when this one's done, it'll be a little bit taller. It's made out of a different wood too. And a little bit deeper, but about the same diameter there. That's kind of what we're working with. Just a cool way to kind of hollow something out that is kind of like a full block of wood with some simple tools. Don't really need anything special to be able to do it. Now, as I mentioned, you can obviously do what we're doing here and hollow it out. Or you can use something that's a little bit easier and is kind of already in the correct shape. Close that up so we're not harming anything here. Like a walnut shell. Additionally, you could use things like fruit skins and dry them out over a fire, make them nice and hard. You live in a place that has something like coconuts, you could use something like that and make a much bigger bowl. But you could also do this and kind of the same sort of thing. Just kind of carve out different sections of it. You already have holes in there, as you can see, and kind of do the same sort of thing. This one's much harder to hold, so be especially careful and slow when doing this to make sure you're not cutting anything. But kind of hollow out the holes until they meet together. So there's 2 holes, as you can see here. I should probably show what I'm doing. There's 2 holes, and I'm doing the same sort of hollowing out motion like this on the inside of this hole, and I'll do it on the inside of this one until they meet up. I'm not really going to show this because, yet again, it's more time than we've got available to ourselves, and I just kind of want to show you that you could do the same thing here. Something like a coconut would be really easy because you just clean the meat out, and it's kind of ready to go. Especially since there's liquid inside, you may want to put that over a fire and make sure it hardens up too, but that should work pretty well as well. I also wanted to talk about twigs and smaller stuff. So obviously you can do fires with this stuff. I'm not going to talk about that. That's pretty common knowledge. But I do want to revisit our green wood versus dry wood conversation that we were having earlier. This stuff is green wood, and once it gets to the thicker stuff, it starts to break, but I can kind of just wrap this around. And then yet again, you can fire harden it and dry the moisture out, and it'll kind of stay in place. I've done that before on numerous projects. I don't think I've done that on one that was on the channel, but I have done that before. Versus this stuff, this is drier wood. And if you see, I start to wrap it around doing the same thing, and we already have a snap. I didn't even make one full revolution. This is kind of self-explanatory if you've done this kind of stuff before, but if you want to do something like lashing with some smaller twigs or vines, make sure it is greener wood, and then fire harden it in place to make sure it stays in place. That's a cool technique to do as well. Now, I do want to talk a little bit before we move on to the carp fishing rigging section about proper cutting techniques and kind of blade shapes, because this is something a lot of people who are new to Bushcraft don't know a lot about. This is called a Scandi grind. If you can see, it's flat up at the top, and it goes down to a V. And you're like, okay, what's special about that? If we look at our Swiss Army knife, it's flat, and it goes down to a V, but the V is much shallower, and kind of as soon as you come off of that V, it's flat again. And this is called a flat grind. There's other types of grinds, but this is one of the most common. The Scandi grind, the V goes right down to a point. There's no secondary bevel, and it's large. What this helps you do is it's almost like a chisel, and you can take off really large chunks of wood with it. I kind of want to talk about technique when you're doing this, because you can do stuff where you kind of just feather it off and barely even go through the layer of bark, or you can take off really big chunks with it and it works pretty well either way, but you have to know how to do it, right? You can't just push into it and take off bigger chunks. I mean, it does work, but it's a lot harder to do, and it kind of wants to push the knife out of your hand. It's not the safest. What I like to do is almost start it up towards like vertical, not vertical, but maybe 45 degrees, push down and scoop it, and it almost breaks it off like a chisel. I don't know. Let's see if I can show you from a side angle. Kind of scoop it, and it breaks it off like a chisel. I don't know if that is showing up real well. That one actually did really well because it didn't fully break off, so you can see what I mean. I wasn't really cutting here. I was almost using it as a wedge and kind of breaking off a couple layers. I don't know if you can see there. That's what I was doing. That's something I do a lot. It's a lot easier to kind of break it off and kind of scoop it out. Use the back of the blade to kind of push against and scoop out, as opposed to actually cutting it. And if you want to actually slice through things and use the sharpness of the blade, kind of just slide it lightly at more parallel to the angle you're trying to cut. There's a lot of interesting cutting techniques. I've talked about batoning before in a video. I'll go over it. I'm not really going to do it, but I'll go over it if you're not familiar. Batoning is essentially where you go like this. You can see me up at the top of the screen. Go like this, and you kind of use another stick or something hard to pound it down through. Make sure your hands are out of the way, and kind of use it like a pseudo hatchet. That's something else you can do. A lot of cool cutting techniques. I just thought that was something that a lot of people aren't aware of when they're first doing bushcrafting, or they're new to this style of thing. A lot of people don't realize that I'm not actually cutting through stuff. I'm kind of just chiseling it off, per se. That's something to look at. And then I do want to mention a couple more things, and then we'll get to carp fishing. I mentioned fire before. Yet again, make sure you're safe with your fire use. If you're young, get parent approval. Fire use. Fire can do a lot of things for you in the woods. Help you cook food, help you stay warm. And when you're woodworking, it can do a lot of things as well. If you have jagged edges like this that you want to make it go down, especially on something like this, like down on the inside of it where you can't really reach it to get it nice and smooth. If you put a flame in there, it'll kind of take care of it for you. Burn down all the little edges and make it flat. And it will also harden up the wood, as I mentioned, and kind of seal it, make it less prone to weathering and stuff like that. That's something fire can do. And it's really, really, really efficient. I did about half the work of smoothing out the inside of this with a knife, and the other half was me just burning the inside. You can see the burnt color down in there. It looks cool too. And I put a lot of work into this piece because it's something that I'm going to, keep in the house and have as kind of like a cool little trinket. But you don't have to be super professional with it when you're just using it for outdoor recreational fun use while you're in the woods. But it is something to know, which I think is good. Kind of seals off the wood and helps make it smoother. And then there's one more thing I do want to talk about, if I can find some string. I actually have some fishing line, which I can talk about. So, in bushcrafting, there is like 2 knots. It's pretty much 2 knots that I use, and I'll eventually do a video, maybe even do a live on the knots that I use for all my outdoor adventures. Like there's a couple knots I use for fishing, couple I use for bushcrafting, couple general knots. I only use a couple knots for everything I do, and there's pretty much only 2 that I use for bushcrafting, and that's about it, right? The first one is the most basic thing you've ever seen, right? We got our fishing line here, which I'll use to demonstrate. It's an overhand knot with another overhand knot. And what this does, sometimes I even do 3. What this does is it makes something that you can cinch down around something. And there's nothing special. You don't have to hold anything in place. You just cinch it down, but because you did it 3 times, it kind of stays in place unless you pull on it, right? And what this is beneficial for is I do this to hold stuff together while I'm propping it up or wedging it between 2 places. I just hold it together, right? It's nothing more than a placeholder for me. Has no structural integrity. It's almost like a clamp, right? I have these clamps in my toolbox. This is a real small one, but I have like these. These are to hold stuff together while you're putting stuff together, doing, you know, just normal projects with tools. That's kind of what this knot does, right? It just holds stuff while you're getting it set. I use that a lot. And then the other knot I use is this, which I have showed in a video. It's one of my worst performing videos, so, you know, you probably haven't seen it. I think it only has like 60 views, and it's probably 6 months old, but I have showed this before. What you do here is this is for lashing things together super, super tightly. You can do it in an X formation like this or side by side. I'll show you both. So I'm going to break this apart. Oh, I can't break it because it's green wood. There you go. Good demonstration of what I was talking about earlier. There you go. Have to cut it. But we've got our line here. So I'll show you how to do it side by side. So first what you do, tie a simple overhand knot, which I'm kind of doing off camera, but you guys know what an overhand knot is. Simple overhand knot, and leave a little tag end like this, right? So now what you're going to do is you're just going to wrap it a couple times, make sure it's nice and tight. And then you wrap it like that. And then what you're going to do to make sure it cinches up and stays in place, I'm going to hold that, is you're actually going to go between the two of them, right? Between the two pieces here. Just like this. And then go in from the top. And what we're doing, I'll show you in a minute here. What we're doing is we have our wraps going this way, holding the two together, and then we're wrapping around those wraps, which kind of tightens around those and pulls the whole setup together. Right, so we got that, and if we pull on it real good, I don't know how well you can see, but it's actually pulling the middle. There you go. If I separate it here, and then I pull on it, it pulls the middle together, and then pulls the two sides so that they cinch together. And then what you do with this little tag end, you do a square knot, which I guess technically is part of this whole setup, but it is a knot in of itself. One side, let's just say it's right side over left side over right side. Super strong when you're pulling from two directions, and then you hold that in place, and that will essentially, the nice thing about this is you have it holding itself together if you're lashing it, but then if you do it a little bit looser and leave some space in between them, it can pivot. So I've got my knot tied, but it can still pivot here, which is something that's really interesting about this. And then what I also wanted to mention, I'm not going to demonstrate it, is that if you have it X like this and you want to lash them together like this, you can do your overhand knot, and then you can do X wraps instead of wrapping just around them together. You can do X wraps and then do the same thing, but instead of doing it in between it like this, you can do in between it by coming down where they intersect and wrapping around this direction. And it does the exact same thing. And then if you leave it loose, like I said, these can also pivot like that too. That's pretty much the extent of the knots that I use. And you know most of my cutting techniques that I use for most of my projects now. So with that being said, I am going to bring over some stuff, and we're going to move into rigging up for carp. Let's check chat. I haven't done that in a while. Let's see what's going on. New subscriber. Thank you, Bank Fishing Adventures. I really appreciate it. Yeah, hopefully this is somewhat entertaining. I never know. You know, sometimes I feel like I'm just ranting to a phone, and then I forget there's people on the other side. I'm like, is this really entertaining anybody? Hopefully it is. Just made a big bucket of pack bait for tomorrow. Let's hope it's a good mix. Well, I trust you. You know more about it than I do. Yeah, hopefully we catch fish too. You said it should be pretty good, and you're the expert here. So I trust you here. I used to watch Leo years ago. Leo, I assume you're talking about Extreme Philly Fishing. Did I miss something here? Maybe I did. I don't know. I assume you're talking about Extreme Philly Fishing, who I do I watch a lot of extreme Philly fishing. He's a super, super cool dude. And if you're not familiar, I actually have a video where he's in one of my videos. I went to the Philly Fishing Expo last year and filmed a video. I'm actually going back a week and a day from today. Saturday the 17th, I'll be there. Anybody who is in the area, feel free to come. Obviously, I would appreciate seeing you there. It'd be super cool to meet some of you guys who I haven't met in person. Super fun event. Sell a whole bunch of stuff. You can learn stuff. He was there with his company Euro Tackle last year. I talked with him on camera, kind of did a little interview. Bought some stuff from the company. He's going to be there again this year, so watch in maybe a month or so for a video about the expo, and he should be in that video. So yeah, super, super cool dude. I've learned a lot from him. And yeah, definitely a cool watch for multi-species anglers like myself and anybody else in here who is interested in learning more about multi-species stuff. Let's see what else is in here. Grammy is here and Mimi is here. We got both sets of grandparents in here watching. I always appreciate having you guys in here. I love doing this YouTube stuff because it's something I like. I love interacting with other outdoorsmen, but also this is a great resource for someone like me. I am just a teenager, right? I love my grandparents. My grandparents on my mom's side now live a lot closer. They're in an assisted living home near us, which is great because, I mean, not great for the circumstances, but great because I get to see them a lot. But my other set of grandparents, they live like 2 hours away from us. And this is actually a really great resource to be able to like talk to them, show them what I'm up to, and have some more interaction with them because, you know, it'd definitely be a lot tougher to be able to show them what I'm up to if I didn't have this cool platform. I always appreciate having you guys in here. Yeah, Leo's a little stressed out, and his last live was a little heated. Yeah, I watched a little bit of that. He was talking about anglers and protecting resources and making sure you handle fish properly. And then he went off into making sure you vote and making sure you choose people who are going to have angler interests in mind, which is an important topic, but I like to keep it a little bit more fun on my channel. Super cool dude, as I mentioned, but he definitely can get into the weeds on some of the scientific stuff and some of the more regulatory stuff. Yet again, not something that takes away from him, but not something that like I'm super into watching, you know? I listen to a couple podcasts about outdoors and conservation, and that's pretty much the extent of my desire to discuss that or hear about that stuff because it can kind of get a little bit repetitive and a little bit drag you down, you know, like, oh yes, the fishery is dying and we need to protect it. It can be kind of depressing, and I kind of just want to have fun at times. So yeah, definitely was a little bit strange there for a little bit. All right, I think I got through all the chats, and now I'm gonna put away these goggles because these aren't mine. These are my dad's. I'll make sure that they get back to where they're belonging. Just kick the camera. Sorry about that. All right, make sure there's no more chats here for a second. All right, so I'm now going to kind of just push this over here. Not really going to clean off the area because that would take a lot of time, but I'm going to push that back a little bit. Catch you later. Going back to work. That's unfortunate. Work is never fun, but hopefully you enjoyed the live. Thanks for coming in. I'm going to bring over the rods and some of the gear and start rigging up and just, you know, check chat, talk about some stuff as I'm rigging up. Especially feel free to ask any questions to both me and Bob. Bob's in the chat, and I'm going to be going with him tomorrow, and he knows a lot about the spot we're going to, knows a lot about the bait we're using, a lot about the gear we're using that I don't know. I know what I'm doing, and that's about it. The technical stuff should be questions for Bob, and he's in here, so you can ask him. So the first one we got is this one. This is kind of, I was talking to Bob, and I was like, hey, should I use more of my catfish setups, or should I use my bass and inshore setups? This is one of my bass and inshore setups. It's a 6-foot medium power rod with a 2000 size reel, 15-pound line, and it goes down to whatever mono leader or mono or fluorocarbon leader I tie on. Reel is a Carbon X 2000. Rod is an Ugly Stick GX2. Super great setup. The rod is not the most sensitive thing ever, but they're super strong and they kind of just do the job, especially when you add braid on and a nice lightweight reel. Definitely a rod that works pretty well, and it's only like 40 bucks. Really, really good rod. Had this one for a long time and really don't have a lot of bad things to say about it. If you're more interested in like the gear style videos and stuff like that, I will eventually, I don't know when, because I keep getting more rods and then I have to film more about them and use them more before I can talk about them. But eventually I will have a rod and reel arsenal video talking about all of them. As my family members know, sorry, still can't talk apparently. I have a lot of them. I think I have, this is terrible. I think I have 16. 3 of them live up at our lake house permanently, so they're not at the house, but I have a lot, probably more than I need, but I've got this rod, and that's what we're talking about, but yeah, I've got a lot of rods. This one serves me pretty well. I will eventually talk about all of them in a video, but this one, pretty good setup. As I mentioned, this reel makes a little bit more noise than it should. This bearing got compromised. My dad and I did some work on it, cleaned it up as best as we could, but it does still make some noise. And I'm probably going to buy a replacement bearing for it eventually, but the reel still works fine. It still feels smooth. It just makes more noise than it should. Drag's great on the reel. Pretty lightweight reel, and this reel is probably only 60 bucks. Super nice reel. It is saltwater ready. You make sure you clean it off after you use it in saltwater, but I have caught plenty of saltwater fish on there. There's a couple videos on my channel of me using this setup in saltwater as well. This is going to be my lightest setup for carp. I am going to bring a rod that I can swap out for trout, because we may end up doing a little bit of that, according to Bob. You'll have to ask him the details about that, but I am going to bring that rod, but this is going to be the lightest carp rod. As I mentioned, it's a medium, so should be a nice fight if I hook a good carp, but it does have strong enough line. My leader's only going to be 12 pounds, so it should be fine. I'll just have to fight him a little bit more. So yeah, I'm going to rig this one up first. Lots of trout jumping today, so we may get on some trout. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull the line up through the guides. It's always a good place to start. I feel like I know I talk a lot. I'm a very talkative person. That comes from my mom. She's in chat. She can confirm. She may be driving now. Maybe she's not in chat. But anybody who knows my mom, she's a talkative person. I can kind of just talk. Hopefully I'm not sounding ranty for you. Hopefully I'm, saying things that are valuable to everyone. I'm trying, I feel like I'm ranting a little bit, but, we'll see. So now what we're going to do is I have 10 pound. This is either 8 or 10 pound mono leader from when I was bass fishing with it. I don't know how old this is, and I don't know what pound line it is. So I'm just going to cut it off and tie on a leader of 12 pound, which I have sitting here. And I use a GT knot. Yet again, I will do a video some point talking about the knots that I use for all my outdoor stuff. This is one of like 3 knots I use for fishing. I think there's only like 3 knots I use. I use just a regular fisherman's knot, improved fisherman's knot, to tie on all my stuff. A lot of people say it's not the greatest knot, but I use it for pretty much all my stuff. Occasionally, I'll use a Palomar knot, but it's pretty much just the improved fisherman's knot to tie on 2 hooks. To connect different pieces of line, I use a GT knot, and to make loops in the end of my line, I use a figure 8 loop knot. That's the extent of the knots I use for fishing. A lot of people are like, oh, for this, you use this and all this fancy stuff. I keep it simple. The GT knot works for me. I've never, ever had the knot break. I've always had the leader break. Never has broken at the knot. It's pretty simple to tie. I'm going to connect my mono to my 15 pound braid using a GT knot because it works. I'm not going to go super in depth on how to do this because, as I said, I'll do a video on it eventually. Essentially, you do a figure 8 loop up at the top of your leader line. I'm using 12 pound mono, as I mentioned. That's not right. Trying to talk and do this at the same time is something I've never had to do before, and it's kind of, it's a cool little challenge. Okay, so this is what we're looking like. figure 8. Let's see. It actually shows up pretty good against my shirt. We'll use that. So we got a figure 8. The loop at the bottom is a little smaller. It doesn't matter though. Got a figure 8. Now we take the braid. We go down through the first hole, up through the other. If I can get it through there. All right. And now we pull out a little bit extra. That's probably too much, actually. Okay, that's probably good. The reason I'm doing this, for those of you who are not familiar, braid, super strong, super thin for its size. Like this is 15-pound braid and it's probably half as thin as this 12-pound mono. Super cool material, but it is not abrasion resistant and it's not at all clear. So fish see it, and if you go into a brush pile, it's probably gonna snap. So I'm putting this mono on, make sure the fish don't see it, and to make sure that if somehow I'm fighting a fish and it rubs up against something on the bottom or something like that, it isn't going to break. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. So essentially, back to the GT knot. I need to have better transitions, better segues between what I'm talking about. That's something I should work on. But essentially, now back to the GT knot and how to tie it. We have our mono up top. Use my shirt again. Mono up top, braid on bottom, and they're going to be laying right next to each other. You make a loop with both of them and then pull just the braid away. Yet again, I'll do a more detailed video on this eventually. And then I'm going to go back through the hole 6 times. That's typically what I do. You can do more, you can do less. Really depends on the thickness of your line. I use my mouth to pull it back through the hole because I only have 2 hands and it's kind of hard to do unless you have 3 hands. So I use my mouth as a 3rd hand. There you go, 6. And then you tighten it up and use my shirt again. I keep forgetting. This little thing here, it makes like a little barrel around both of the lines. Then I tighten that up, and then you grab the mono side and the braid side, and you can pull them together. Then pull on your tag ends. Make sure you pull from all the different directions, all the different lines that are hanging off. Tighten it up. Super small knot. It's not super hard to tie. There's some that are like trying to, it's like a school test, right? You're like, what the heck is this? But this one's pretty easy. It's really strong. Hasn't ever broken on me. And yeah, it's pretty small too, which means it's good at going through the guides. There's a lot of them that are really big and are kind of cumbersome to go through the guides. Then essentially you just cut off the tag pieces, which I'm going to do down here off camera because that would be difficult to do on camera. I saw, if I remember correctly, Bob just shared the link to the live for tomorrow, which is awesome. Definitely go give that a look. Make sure you know where to find it so you can catch me, him, and probably his sons fishing tomorrow. Now what I'm going to... All right, more segues. Now I'm going to go back to the rod setup here. I'm going to reel this up so that I actually have a pretty long leader, probably about 8 feet, just so I have some good abrasion resistance if it does decide to go somewhere. I want about the first 8 feet to be mono. This also is helpful because carp have fairly soft mouths and mono stretches. Braid does not. So this is going to give me some good like shock absorption while I'm fighting fish as well. Now I get to go grab the carp gear and we're going to rig it up. And Bob can tell me how good I am at rigging up carp gear, or how bad. We'll see. Alrighty, so what I've got is I've got a box full of goodies. There's a lot of random stuff in here, but we've got what are called baiting needles. We have these rubber bands, which are for something else. This is like my specialty rigging kit is essentially what this is. And we have a whole bunch of these stoppers. We have some fake corn. We have what are called hair rigs. And we have what are called method libs or method feeders. Let's check chat. I saw something in here. Live chat. 12 pounds is good. Fantastic. Live feed. Yes, the boys will be there. Kev may wander off for trout or bass too. Sounds good. Maybe I'll wander around with him for a little while. I'm bringing a little rod, so we'll see what I can do with that. Back to rigging. That was a good segue. We're working on it. We're getting there. Back to rigging. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put on the method feeder. Okay. So there's a little swivel that already is in this plastic piece. I'm going to pull that out because there's a swivel on the rig that we're going to end up using on the hair rig. I'm going to pull this out, and we're going to thread our line down through the method feeder. Actually, I should check if this is the right weight. It's not. That's a good thing I checked because it's not even the right weight. Okay, we want 15. This is the lightest one I've got, and this is the lightest rod I'm going to use, so it's a perfect pairing. Yet again, pull the swivel out. This one has one too. Pull the swivel out, but we want to keep the little plastic thingy, little rubbery plastic thing. We want to keep that in there because it catches the swivel that we will use. Alright, let's get rolling here. I may only end up rigging up the one on camera because it's taking a little bit longer to explain than I thought it would. But I'll show you the other rods I'm going to use too. So, send this down through here. Just like that. It's like a little tube. And then you shove this back through the method bud. Like so. And then feed the line all the way through so it's popping out the other side there. Oh, we got 8 people in here. That's awesome. Let me know who's in here if you just came in or you've come in recently. I know most of the people who are in here, but I think there's probably 3 or so of you who are a mystery to me. I don't know who you are. Don't know where you came from. Let me know your life story. Probably not. Don't do that. But, you know, give me some info. Now what we're going to do is pull out a hair rig. These have swivels attached to them. Bob has showed this on a short on his channel. He may be better at explaining it too. So if you're not understanding here or you want a more up-close view, definitely go over to his channel. You got a swivel here. We're just going to tie it on. As I mentioned previously in the live, I just use an improved fisherman's knot. That's what I'm going to do. For those of you who are new to this sort of thing, make sure you always wet any sort of nylon lines, meaning mono, fluoro, and copolymer. Copolymer is also a thing, but it's way less used. You're likely using mono or fluoro. So I'm doing that, and then I'm going to wet it just with my saliva to make sure the friction doesn't cause it to melt. That weakens the knot, and that would be a terrible way to lose a big fish by not wetting your line. That'd be very unfortunate and not fun. So we're just going to work that knot down and pull on the tag end a little bit. That should be good. Cut off the tag end. Now we've got a hair rig on the end. Hair rigs, they're like I think this is Dacron. Minnows, or I think I'm missing something. We'll see. I'll look in a second. But I think this is Dacron. It's like some nylon string. It's not fishing line. It's closer to this braided feeling, if you know what braided line is like. And then you have a little loop that comes off the back of the hook. There we go. Loop that comes off the back of the hook. So what this is this loop. I have some fake corn. I bought this stuff. I'm going to be trying some different carp techniques. I've done just straight corn on a hook with a sliding rig. When I do the video with Bob, I'm going to be essentially seeing what I think of. This is European style carp fishing. Basic American carp fishing is you put a corn on a hook with a weight and cast it out there and see if you can catch fish. European style is much more advanced, but theoretically it works better. So I'm going to, when I go out with Bob tomorrow, I'm going to film a video and see whether I think this stuff is actually worth it or you should just put a corn on a hook and catch stuff. This is fake corn. This is method feeder, hair rig. This is stuff I've never really used before. I've caught plenty of carp, but not on this stuff. So we're going to see what it's like tomorrow. And one of those things that I've never used before is fake corn. This goes on the hair rig. And essentially the idea is, Bob can chime in here, feel free to do that, is essentially this method feeder holds what's called pack bait. As he said earlier in chat, he made a whole bunch of this earlier today for us to use. It's essentially kind of like a Play-Doh type bait that kind of dissolves in water over time. The carp come, it kind of makes a little chum circle, and they come feed on it. And you tuck the hook with the fake corn into the little pack bait ball that is on the method feeder. This helps to improve hookup ratio and not get carp scared. The corn that floats above the pack bait as it dissolves. Yeah. So, and then they come feed on that corn. So, what was I saying here? Okay, so you stick this. Oh, now my aunt's in here. Awesome. So you stick the hook into the pack bait ball with the corn, and then this serves as a way to help improve hookup ratio and have the carp not get scared. I can confirm, if you guys, I'll put a clip of it in my upcoming video here with Bob, but can confirm that carp can be hook shy. If they feel the hook, they may run away. Has happened to me before. If you guys saw my tournament video where I competed in the Sunfish King tournament video, at the end of it, I went carp fishing, had numerous carp bite my hook and instantly let go because they felt it. Definitely are hook shy, so this theoretically is going to help with that problem and help our hookup ratio. And the little loop on the back is so that the hook and the corn are actually separate. They're going to try and suck in the corn and get the hook with it. That's the idea here. And the way you do that, and you get the corn on that little loop, is using this baiting needle. I just got all this stuff in yesterday by Bob's recommendation. This is all gear Bob recommended to me. And you essentially pull out one of these fake pieces of corn. You stab it through. This is kind of like rubbery. It's just like little rubber stuff. You stab it through, and I don't know if you can see, it has a little hook. There you go. Do it against my face. It has a little hook. This hook goes on the loop. Like that. And then you slide it down the baiting needle onto the loop. And now, if I take it off of the loop, you have it on there. You then want to put one of these stoppers on to make sure it can't come back off. I'm actually going to put 2 pieces because I think it fills out the thing better. Maybe if Bob tells me in chat, like, no, don't do that, then I won't do it, but I think I'm going to put 2 pieces on here. I have 2 pieces on. I set one of these rods up last night just to make sure I knew how to do it. I have 2 pieces on that hair rig as well. Let's check chat. Corn floats above the pack bait as it dissolves. An overlooked benefit of pack bait is that the carp tend to stick to the area even after you reel in a few. Yeah, so see, this is stuff that I didn't think about because I've never used this stuff. Bob is the guru. I'm sure he's probably not a guru, but he knows a lot more than I do about this topic. So, yeah. Let's see, I think someone else had one. Bank fishing adventures. If they've been hooked a few times, they tend to be a little smarter the next time. Yeah, the pond I was at during that video, I don't know what was happening, but every time they touched the hook, they would not take it. It took me 3 hours to catch a carp, you know? It was crazy. I read a book. Yeah, so he's a carp guru by evidence of his reading. I do 3 or 4. Okay, yeah. Thing with these, which these are definitely a little bit more bulbous than real pieces of corn, so I think 2 is probably going to be the sweet spot here. But yeah, you'll have to let me know tomorrow. If you're like, no, that doesn't look good, let me know. But this is what I'm doing today. So same thing here. Stab the second piece of fake corn, pop it through, put the hook on to the loop, and slide it down. All right, now we have 2 pieces of corn, fake corn that is, on the loop. And we're going to use one of our little stoppers in here, which they're on these like little plastic pieces. I'm going to have to break one off, but use a little stopper to make sure it doesn't come back off the loop, because easy as it is to get it on the loop, they can also come right back off. So we're going to put a stopper on the loop to make sure it doesn't come back off when we don't want it to. All right, Bob, you'll have to let me know. This is what my rig is looking like. We kind of have a little string with little pieces of corn, and I can pull this up tighter as well by adjusting this. Just like that. And that can kind of sit and kind of swing freely. And then the hook will get sucked in only when the fish tries to take the corn. So they can't be thrown off by the hook because they won't feel it at first. That's the whole idea behind this. Bob will have to let me know in chat if he thinks this is appropriate. If not, I guess we'll have to make some adjustments. But I think this should be good. So overall, this is kind of what our rig is looking like. We have the smallest one. Kind of pull it like this. And then we'd have a ball pack bait on our method feeder. We have this, our leader down to our hair rig with our fake corn. And this would sit in the pack bait like this, just like that. That's what I've got going on. Bob will have to let me know if he thinks that's adequate. That won't be the reason we get skunked. Sunfish King. I was just talking about competing in your tournament a couple minutes ago. I'm not sure if you were here for that. Yeah. So I think that is an appropriate hair rig. I think I'm going to call it for rigging tonight. Well, not tonight. I'm going to do more off camera, but trying to talk and explain stuff and keep a engaging conversation going while tying up rigs is harder than you would think. So that's what our rig looks like. We've got one rod done. I'm going to show you the other rods that I'm going to bring tomorrow. And then we'll chat for a little bit, and I'm going to call it a night. Alrighty, so here's another one. Same sort of rig, but we have the 35-gram one. This is on a fairly heavy rod. Hopefully, if we hook one, it's a nice big fish on this. This is a medium heavy 7-foot Daiwa D-Wave 4000 size reel. I've used this on flatheads and carp before. It's a fairly stiff setup. For any fin, this is the same one I caught my flathead on when I went fishing for them and with them in Philly. It's a pretty stiff rod. That's why I stuck the heaviest weight on there. I think personally, most of what a rod's job is and how stiff it is to cast things, not to catch things. So I think really any size carp would be adequate on this. Just might not put a super huge bend in the rod, but we'll definitely be able to cast this heavier method feeder. Oh, and by the way, this one has 30-pound braid to the same 12-pound mono on here. And then we've got Big Long Mama, which I'm probably going to stick the 25-gram one on. This is a medium, so the same as the Ugly Stick. It's a little bit stiffer of a medium, but it is my surf rod. It's in two pieces. It's a five-foot section each. So it's a 10-foot rod. 20-pound braid, same 12-pound mono is what I'm going to do. Set it up just the same. But this one is a medium, so this one's pretty similar to our first rod, just in a bigger format. And this is the other one I'm going to use. Shakespeare Alpha, probably the quintessential cheap surf rod or cheap long casting carp rod. Not the greatest rod, not the most sensitive ever, but it works. I've caught lots of big fish. I've caught plenty of fish in the surf on this, and the rod's like $35. Like, it's the quintessential, cheap surf rod. It's awesome. And then kind of along the same vein, we have a Penn Wrath. This is the cheapest reel that Penn makes. This is a 5,000 size. Like, super cheap surf reel that works, right? I only go surf fishing probably 2 weeks a year. I go surf fishing, and I may start introducing some trips like in the spring or stuff like that, like a quick little day trip down to New Jersey, something like that. But I don't go surf fishing a lot, so I'm not going to spend a lot of money. So $50, $55 reel, $35 rod. It's a really, really good setup and can also double for things like catfish and carp. This is going to be the third carp setup. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to bring a rod for trout which I may swap out and in. You can only have 3 rods out at a time in Pennsylvania. So I'm going to have to do some swapping if I use that trout rod, but I'm willing to do that if the carp aren't biting. So we'll see what happens. I feel like I've spoken like 8 million words today on this live, which is probably true, but hopefully you guys are enjoying it. I'm just going to pull you guys back here, chat for a little while before I call it a day. Tilt it up a little bit more. Cool. Let's see what chat's doing. I just wrapped the pack bait around my sinker. Yeah. It seems like it would work. I don't know if Sunfish King is still in here. Who all is still in here? Just so I know who I'm talking to and what we should be chatting about. I do want to give you some updates on kind of future plans for the channel. I did this at the end of my last live too. And I think it was beneficial. I think it's beneficial to talk like this because to kind of give you guys info about everything that's coming down the pipe in the future would take a lot more community posts or short videos and stuff like that than I really want to do. So kind of just talking to you guys in like a real conversation-esque format, I think is a lot more conducive to my time and me, you know, not going insane. So as far as videos, I have a video from the summer when I tried to see how many fish I could catch in an hour. I'll give you a hint. It was quite a few. I wanted to see, it was kind of like an experiment with all my variables maximized as much as I could. How many fish can I really catch in 1 hour? It was a cool video. I should have that coming down the line here pretty soon. As I said, I'm going to the expo on the 17th. Would love to see a couple of you there in the Philly Fishing Expo. Going to be super fun. I'm going to be filming, buying stuff. If you see me, say, hey, what's up, Mission Discover? My name is actually Nolan. You can call me by that too. Hey, what's up, Nolan? I'll come over, talk to you. I know I'm not like a celebrity, big name guy, but I definitely like love to talk to you, some of you guys who live in the area, because just because you're watching me doesn't mean I've ever met you, and it's super cool, especially to meet people like Bob and be able to go out and fish with them. And meet them through this YouTube platform. It's really, really cool, and would love to meet some more of you. I'm going to the expo, and I'm going to be making a video on that. That will probably be out, I don't know, within the next month and a week or so. Anyfin might be there as well. That's cool. Other videos, I have some videos testing some new just general outdoor gear. I'm going to do a video talking about cheap fixed blades, whether they're really worth your time. Eventually, I have a video coming out about my fish finder. I recently got a fish finder, and I'm going to talk about whether that is really worth your money, because that's kind of a topic that people talk about a lot. Other than that, I don't really know what I have planned. Oh, that's not true. I do have some multi-species madness stuff coming out more towards the summer. I'm going to push it back this year. Fish off at the trout tank. Yeah, that would be fun. They do not like to bite. You almost have to annoy them into biting because they're sitting there all day seeing lures and lures and lures and lures. They're not hungry, but if you annoy them enough, sometimes they will bite. I've caught a couple out of the tank. Just a fun little experience to do while you're at the show. Anyway, I digress. Starting to lose my voice. Jeez Louise, I am talking a lot. But coming back to what we were talking about, I have some multi-species madness stuff that I filmed over the summer. I'm going to push it back to kind of like almost like a teaser or a trailer for summer fishing, kind of, you know, April, May, June, right before summer comes rolling back around, so people have kind of like a preview of some of my favorite spots and some of my favorite trips that I do in the summer. But something that I'm not sure exactly when the video is going to come out, because I don't really know what my scheduling is like. For those of you who don't know, people in my family do know. All my editing is done on our family PC, right? My dad works from home, so he has a lot of stuff that's going on that PC. Obviously, my parents have to do important stuff like taxes and legal documents and stuff on that. So I don't always have access to that computer. So I try my best to stay consistent with my upload schedule on the channel, but I don't always know when I'm going to have access to that computer to edit. Eventually, I will have a laptop. It may come sooner rather than later because my birthday is coming up in April. So I may be getting a laptop, which means I would have very consistent access to be able to edit. But until then, I don't know what my schedule of releases is going to look like because I don't know exactly when I'm going to get editing access. But so with that being said, I don't know when this video is going to be coming out, but we are going to Florida in the end of February. My sister has a gymnastics meet down there on Friday the 23rd, but the 24th and 25th, they're going to go, my mom and my sister are going to go do some beach hangout with all her gymnastics friends. And my dad and I are going to go on some fishing missions and do some saltwater fishing, see how many species I can get. I'm going to film a multi-species madness episode down there in Florida. As I said, I have no idea when that's coming out, but that will happen towards the end of February. Got to pick up Lyle. See ya in the morning. I will indeed. Bob said he will edit. Okay. Okay. All right. Just making sure I'm caught up on chat. Sometimes it's like kind of hard remembering what was said beforehand. And okay. Cool. Great live. I try. Hopefully it was entertaining. But yeah. Going to Florida, gonna do some multi-species fishing. If you follow me on Fishbrain, you'll definitely be seeing posts about that trip much sooner than the video comes out. But yeah, be aware, I will be going to Florida. Maybe I'll do some shorts or something like that about the trip or the experience before the video comes out. But there will eventually be a multi-species madness episode about going to Florida. And on that same note, I bought a rod, which I have a Fishbrain post about as well, that is like a 6-in-1. You can use it in spinning format and bait casting format. Has 6 different configurations. It's a really cool rod. I did a lot of research about it before I bought it, and I've been testing it a little bit. But I bought a rod, so I can only take one rod. It goes into a tube about this big, but I have 6 kind of powers and lengths of rods at my disposal to use. I think it's going to be a really cool item to use in future traveling trips. I'm eventually going to go to Colorado to do some outdoor fun stuff with my aunt and uncle in Colorado. And this trip in Florida as well is going to be using that rod, maybe some future trips as well. But I'm going to be doing a review on that as well at some point, and I'll be using that rod in the Florida experience. So I'm just trying to give you guys an idea of what's going on, what's coming down the pipe, so you have an idea what to look forward to. Another thing is I would really appreciate some feedback on future lives. I really enjoy doing the lives. Hopefully you enjoy watching them. It's an easy way for me to get out a piece of content that is valuable without having to put a ton of hours into editing, right? So that's something that's really valuable to me because I value my time. And as I already mentioned, editing time is few and far between at times. So this is a really, really cool resource for me. So with that being said, I would really appreciate any feedback on what sort of lives and live topics you would like to see me do in the coming months and coming times when I do lives, right? I have a couple ideas. I'm probably going to do a live where I talk about some sharpening techniques and do some testing on how sharp the knives are before and after. It's not going to be super in depth on like my full sharpening technique. At some point in time, I'll probably do a video about that. But being able to have a sharp knife is important no matter what type of outdoorsman you are, and I'm probably going to do a live on that at some point. Yeah, other than that, I'm probably going to do maybe some more bushcraft techniques, maybe more fly tying stuff. But apart from that, I'm not sure I really have a ton of ideas of what to do. So if anyone in chat does, would definitely appreciate that feedback. Let's see if chat has anything to say. No, let's not put my finger in front of the camera. All right. Okay. Hey, Stuart. Nice to see you. I saw that you had a live while I was at dinner with my grandpa. So I imagine you were probably finishing up that live before you came in here. Nice to see you. I got done rigging for Carp and doing some bushcraft stuff. Bob has just left. But yeah, got done essentially preparing to do that with him tomorrow morning. Yeah, really good to see you, Stuart. I've done part of a live over on Stuart's channel as well. So yeah. Okay, I'll think of something. I appreciate it, Bank Fishing Adventures. You know, a lot of what I enjoy doing on the channel. I'm a fairly diverse person as far as what I like to do in the outdoors. So, you know, a lot of it is whatever the viewer wants to see, I'm willing to do because all of it's fun to me, right? So, yeah, anything you think of is probably on the table for me to try and do. Let's get this fishing line wrapped up. I have little Velcro ties that I use to tie up all my fishing line spools. Instead of using like tape or something, I use Velcro ties. Make sure they stay in place. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm tying up carp flies. Oh, well, that's awesome. When springtime rolls around, I'm probably gonna try and fly fish for carp at some point. I'm not really sure how that works, and I don't know anybody who's done it. Like, so it's gonna be a trial and error. Maybe I'll do a learning curve video about it. We'll see. Definitely gonna be a unique experience if I hook one on a 6-weight, but I'm prepared for that fight. I think. I think. We'll see. It would be fun. So yeah, would like to try some of that eventually. Maybe I'll pop onto a live one of these days and you can show me how to tie carp flies. Here, I'll show you my mess that I've got over here. I've got a whole mess on the table here that I'll have to clean up. That's what I'm looking at. So I'll have to clean that up once I end the live, get a couple things ready for tomorrow morning. Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else I should be talking about. We'll just probably give it a couple more minutes and then I'll pop out of here. Let me grab some water. All right. So Stuart, I imagine you'll probably be in Bob's live tomorrow. Bank Fishing Adventures, you might be as well. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys there tomorrow morning. Yeah, so this is kind of the part in the live where stuff starts to peter out. So I'm going to put a 5-minute timer on, and we'll probably end it in 5 minutes. Just call it a day after that. Oh, we got a new chat. Yeah, I will be moderating his live. Yes, we definitely appreciate your help. Because Bob and I had a whole conversation over text about how much trouble he's had recently with keeping the lives, free of people who just want to cause issues, free of trolls, that sort of thing. You can bounce across to me. Oh, you're still live. You've done this before, like where you're in a live chat while you're live. I don't understand how you do this. It's remarkable. It's honestly ridiculous. It's kind of crazy. It's a skill that I definitely don't have. I can't be live and holding a conversation and trying to hold an audience's attention while also listening to someone else. It's crazy. Don't worry, Stuart. I won't kick Bob out. You know what? Good on you. That's awesome. We don't need anybody kicking out the host. That would be a tragedy. But yeah. Anyway, back to that topic. Bob has been having a ton of issues just keeping the chats family friendly, keeping them kind of in order. People being mean to one another. All this stuff is unnecessary, and people like Stuart who are moderating, I try my best to help out with that as well when I'm in the chat. Have been doing a really good job trying to keep that under wraps. Obviously, you can't control all of it, but good job to you guys of doing that, because without that help, it would definitely be a lot harder for Bob to continue doing these lives. He's considered stopping them altogether, and without you guys, I think they would already have been stopped. So good on you guys. Let's see what the live chat said. Yeah, troll bash pending tomorrow, but I hope for a very peaceful day tomorrow. So yes, Stuart, I know you are a member. I'm a member as well. So he did make a members only post saying that I am the best mod he's got. You very well may be. But yeah, he did make a members only post saying that if we start to have issues, he's just going to go member only, which I think is completely fair. We don't need any extra confusion. He's trying to help me out. He has kids to deal with. So definitely try. We're definitely going to try and go full public, but we may just reduce it to member only lives because, it's kind of hard to deal with trolls while also trying to be productive at fishing. I got 3 more minutes and then I'm going to close it out. What is my chat doing here? My chat is like going crazy right now. Yeah, I mean it's definitely a problem. It's kind of disappointing how mean people can be to each other on YouTube. Like, even in life, right? My policy is, I have my beliefs, I have my system of thinking, and if someone doesn't agree with me, that's okay. If they talk to me about it, I can explain why I think what I think. But there's no reason to be mean or bash someone else about what they believe, what they do, especially on an online platform. You're not even talking to someone face to face. It's just disappointing that people do this. And I think it's really, really upsetting how, you take your own feelings and anger towards someone else and you make it hard for someone who's just trying to show people fishing and having a good time. It's I don't know, it's just a problem and it's very disappointing. I'm sorry that Bob has to go through that and many other people go through it too. It's just frustrating to me, especially because I'm pretty young and I know that, society's come to a point to where that's the normal thing and I'm going to have to grow up and live in that for the rest of my life, right? So, it's just crazy. I will try and talk to you about this, but not YouTube. What does that mean? Trolls just can't leave. Oh, yes, but not. I will try to. Yes. So, yeah, I think that's good. Trying to talk to people about problems that you have and beliefs that you have is definitely a good conversation to have, but definitely not over a YouTube chat. Not the place, not the time. You know what I notice? Which when I talk too long, this also happens when I like do weightlifting too. When I talk too long without breathing, and when I weightlift, I have this huge vein over here that just shows up, and I keep seeing it, and it's almost like, why does that keep showing up? It's crazy. Because I'm never seeing it when I'm talking, but I can see myself in the camera, so I see my huge vein. Just kind of a little divergent thing. I just find it really weird that that's there. All right, we got 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to close it out. Thank you guys all for coming in. There's still 6 people in here. Good live, Nolan. Well, thank you, sir. That is very appreciated. Well, I'm not sure who's on the other side right now. I think, aren't there 2 of you over there at Bank Fishing Adventures, or am I thinking of someone else? I know there's 2 people at Small Water Charters. I know there's there's a couple people who frequent Bob's lives that are there's a couple and there's 2 people. You'll need to put on your big boy pants when you're on YouTube. That's a fact. It is indeed. I've already had to deal with some people, not a lot, which is great, but definitely not there's a reason why they make it that there's an age limit to start a YouTube channel. It's kind of an adult thing dealing with people, you have to have that learning phase of learning how to deal with people, and YouTube kind of just throws you in the deep end and says, deal with the worst of them, and you got to do it. So I will watch this live back. Thank you. That will get me more watch hours, and hopefully, I know you weren't here for the first part of it. Hopefully you enjoyed the first part. Maybe you won't. Maybe you will. We'll see. Yeah, so we got 1 more minute. Thank you guys for watching. As I already said, this was good live. Had lots of chatting, lots of good information shared from both you guys and from me. A lot of good conversation. That's what I love about this community. Not only me being able to show you what I know, but also you guys being able to talk to me and other followers and just, learn from each other and become better at what we're doing here, which is trying to enjoy the outdoors. Yeah, super fun. I appreciate all of you for coming in. Anyway, come across, I will show you some carp flies. Yeah, we'll have to set up a time to do that at some point. I'm busy all weekend. Obviously, I've got that thing going on in the morning with Bob, but I've got stuff going on the rest of the day, and I've got stuff going on all Sunday as well. So I'm not sure when that would be. And then I'm going to the expo. I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, definitely can do that at some point. Peace out, everyone. It is indeed time to go. Thank you for coming in. And I'm going to be out of here. Thanks. Thank you all. Let's figure out how to close this out. And all right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for coming in. Make sure to go see Bob's live tomorrow.